But I'm Anita Taylor. I'm director of the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize, as well as being the Dean of Duncan of Jordenston College of Art and Design at the University of Dundee. And I established something called Drawing Project UK in 2009, partly to run the then drawing exhibition. We launched the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize 2022 in London on the 28th of September. There's another week or to the weekend for you all to get to London and to see it, and we know that not everyone can. So we're very keen that some of the engagement programs and educational activities take place online as well as in situ. We will at some point be producing a documentary element of the exhibition, but that takes a little time to produce. So we hope that you'll be able to have some sense of a virtual tour as well as access to the publication that accompanies the exhibition, as well as the education pack devised by Drawing is Free with Drawing Projects UK. So these events, the online drawing discussions, will continue after the exhibition has concluded in London. We're still discussing the scope of those with the tour venue partners, but we will be rolling out some of those discussions from Drawing Projects UK. What I'm really thrilled about is that we've had the opportunity to focus on some of the individual practices within the exhibition, but also some of the temporal media and temporal elements of drawing through these discussions this year. And we will talk more about the other drawings in the show later on. But I'm really thrilled that we're welcoming M.Lohrum with us this evening, and I'll just pin her. I am also without a driver. So I'll pin M.Lohrum so that you can see who is going to be speaking to us. But really thrilled that M.Lohrum is based in Tenerife, lives between London and the Canary, Tenerife in Spain, the Canary Islands. And she studied at the University of Laguna as well as at Central St. Martin's, and is currently studying for a PhD at the Universidad de la Laguna. So you're quite a long way now through that PhD, but as a practicing artist, you've got a substantial career. You've worked in all sorts of exhibitions and presented solo exhibitions in Tenerife, but also in London, and you were fantastically the winner of the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize in 2020. One of the things that's actually remarkable about the show this year is we have a number of previous award winners in the exhibition, and it's really rather lovely to see people still see the exhibition as a vehicle for sharing their work and that community and sharing of drawing practice. So we're really thrilled to see your drawing 6 feet in the exhibition this year. And we were really super thrilled to be able to not just present the documentation of 6 feet, but also to present that live at the launch, which was a spectacular moment for the exhibition and for that evening, is to have that performance. So M.Lohrum is here to talk to us this evening about 6 feet in particular, but I know you'll situate that in context. So I'm going to hand over to you to talk to us about that, and then we will move to questions and answers. So if everyone could pop any questions or thoughts in the chat, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Over to you, M.Lohrum.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Okay, I guess you can see my screen now, right? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you, and we can
Wonderful.
still see you.
All right. So thank you very much, Anita, in the first place, for inviting me to this wonderful series of drawing discussions. And thank you very much to all who attended today to this talk, which I hope you will find interesting. Well, Anita already introduced myself, but just to mention very quickly, I'm a visual artist working in performative drawing. I'm also studying for a PhD at the University of La Laguna, And today we are going to speak about the work 6 Feet, which is the work I had been selected this year for the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize, which you can see as a moving image work in the exhibition, but we also, as Anita said, were lucky enough to perform the work live during the exhibition launch. So I feel really thankful for that. And well, before I begin speaking about this particular work, I would like to very quickly just mention, especially for those who are not familiar with the term, that performative drawing is a process-based oriented drawing practice that focuses more in the act of drawing and how the body of the producer is involved in it, rather than on the image being produced. And when having clarified this, we can now move on and speak about the work itself. During the COVID-19 pandemic, and as part of my PhD research, I decided to develop a series of works in which I would use performative drawing as a tool to reflect about the situation we were all going through. More specifically, I was interested in reflecting about those new habits that we needed to learn and incorporate to our lives due to the virus, such as the use of face masks or sanitizer, gloves, but especially since participative works are a quite important part of my practice, I was interested in looking at social distancing and to explore new ways of working together relating to others. As I said, I started this project in 2020, and it culminated in the summer of 2021, precisely with a piece of work that we're speaking about today. At the moment, I'm showing you some images of the previous research I undertook in my studio, specifically one of the first tests I did around social distancing. And this is actually more or less 6 feet in a very embryonic stage. As you can see at the beginning, I was working around this idea with just 2 performers. And there were a lot of aspects yet to be refined, such as the best way to tie people together, or whether it was better to work horizontally or vertically, etc. And notice as well that in this first test, performers can still see each other. So now I would like you to show you very quickly a brief excerpt of the video of this first experiment that we did in the studio. I'm not playing yet. Hold on. Okay. Right. So as I said, in this first experiment, there was only me and my friend Sylvia who helped me to test this idea in my studio. And the wooden stick which was joining our wrists was actually 2 meters long, which was the actual social distance, but then I decided to make it shorter for the definitive work. And we were working on vertical on the wall. We could still see each other, so we could use our sight to communicate with each other. And these are all elements that I decided to change over the time when I refined the piece of work. Well, I think that's enough. I just wanted to give you a feeling of what it was. Oh, sorry, no, I should now play the actual piece of work. Sorry, my bad. Where's that? All right. Okay, so this is how the work ended up being. As I said, one of my biggest interests is the making of participative works, and I like them very much for several reasons. One of them is that they question the notion of individual authorship and provide an opportunity for others to join me in my creative process and co-author the work with me. When I visit museums or galleries, I personally love it when I encounter as a member of the audience a piece of work in which I can take part or get involved. So I try to offer to my audience that opportunity as well. Another reason why I'm so interested in participative performances is because I think they act as a kind of statement against the individualistic attitude that has a negative impact in our society. And in turn, they emphasize collectivity and collaboration, which are values that I believe to be way more positive and productive, and that we need to reinforce as a community. And this particular work that we are discussing today, as I said before, allowed me to explore new ways of relating to others and working with others, especially in those times where it wasn't safe to physically approach others. Actually, during the COVID-19 pandemic, this was the only participative work I could make. And I was only able to do it because the restriction of 5 people maximum that was running in Spain at the moment was not applicable to the educational context. And since this work was part of my PhD research, I saw an opportunity and got a permission from the dean of my university to perform this piece of work with 10 people at the Fine Art College facilities. And that is how the magic could happen, basically. So as I said, I arranged a drawing session with 10 participants to create a collaborative drawing by tracing their performance that was subject to the following rules. Draw as far as you can reach, and drive the people next to you, but also let them drive you. As you can see from the image, I laid out 10 trapezoidal pieces of paper on the floor, distributed in the shape of a circle, and I left some gaps in between for the participants to sit. I then joined the wrists using wooden bars, which emphasized the 6 feet distance between the participants. And yet that social distance is the obvious reason why the work is entitled 6 feet. But those wooden bars also caused that the movements and decisions of each participant conditioned the performance of all the others. You may think that each participant is only influencing the people who are right next to them. But by watching the video, you can actually realize that that influence passes on to the next performer and then to the next one and so on, until eventually even people who are sitting at opposite sides of the circle are actually affecting each other. And this is a bit what the work is about as well. Just like it happens in society, every single thing you decide to do will end up affecting others, even people who are not close to you. Actually, that is why and how exactly the virus spread. Likewise, the movements of the performers propagate through the structure, affecting every single one of their fellow performers. So the aim for them was kind of embracing that fact, but also trying to hold a movement-based dialogue with others so that the thing works as a whole. They couldn't just think about themselves, like, I want to make this movement, so let's do it. But instead, they needed to pay attention to others to perceive what they wanted them to do and work as a group. This was quite evident as well when we performed the work at the Trinity Buoy Wharf. Even though the participants involved were completely different people, the mechanics and feelings remained the same. Like it happened in Tenerife, once the process started, all the participants seemed to immerse themselves in a common meditative state and started to move together without resigning to their individual characters, of course, but still working as a single unit. When we did the original performance that you can watch in the exhibition as a moving image work, I was filming from above, so I had a privileged point of view, which is actually the same one you're having at the moment. So I could observe what was going on. And during the whole session, I had this feeling that the participants were all moving together really smoothly. They almost resembled to me like a kind of cell or organism that was breathing, expanding, and contracting together. I need to emphasize that they were all facing towards the outside of the circle, as you can see in the image, so that they couldn't see each other, and therefore needed to focus a lot on the tensions and use their whole body to communicate with others in this kind of, as I said, movement-based dialogue. I personally think that compared to my previous works, 6 feet conveys a strong sense of togetherness. which is interesting, especially considering that the work is precisely based on social distancing. Perhaps it is because of the circular distribution, or perhaps because all participants are in frame at all times, or because they are all tied together, or maybe it's actually a mixture of all. But whatever the reason is, I think the work conveys a sense of unit or of an interrelation of parts that work together as a whole. And this perception of the group of performers as a single living organism, in my opinion, underlies that society is nothing but a group of individuals that are somehow linked or interrelated, whether that link is material or not. I think the work emphasizes the gregarious character of human being and therefore has sociological readings. But I believe this work also has certain psychological character. I have to say that all the people who took part in this work were so very much looking forward to have the opportunity of gathering and working with others. At the time, as I mentioned before, we weren't allowed to meet with others, so our social life was quite restricted. And I think it was liberating for them as well to have an opportunity to do something working as a group for the first time in a very long time. You could feel it in the atmosphere, actually. There was kind of an almost urgent need of doing something and be close to other people. All right, so now let's move on and go back to the presentation and have a look to the work at Trinity Buoy Wharf. So when we performed this work at the opening of the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize, the situation was already, and thank God, quite different. Things are now more or less back to normal, and people have resumed the social habits they had before the pandemic started. However, even though social distancing is no longer needed, I felt like the work still makes sense in this new normal context, because as I mentioned before, the work is not only about social distancing itself, but it's also about collectivity and collaboration and about how society works. The comment I received from the audience and from the performers were still pointing in that direction, actually. They all like this idea of a group of people working as a single unit. I should mention as well that the performance in this occasion was accompanied by the sound of this year first prize winner, who had a video work projected on the wall behind the performance. And I think the sound of the cello conditioned the performance of the participants in a positive way. Because I believe that having this kind of shared soundscape surrounding them reinforced that feeling of togetherness and helped them to concentrate in the performance. For me, it was also very interesting to have an opportunity to see how this work works in a different context. One of my main interests as well is site specificity. And I often produce works that are created in direct response to the spaces where they are going to be exhibited. And although this wasn't exactly the case this time, I have to say that having the opportunity to show 6 feet in a completely different context was fascinating. In a way, the work remained the same, but at the same time, it turned into something totally different. So that was very interesting. I would like to now play a short excerpt of the video of the performance we did at the opening. So I think now is when I need to stop sharing and then share again with the sound so you can actually hear the sound, because that's what I want you to do, to hear the sound basically. So, all right, so stop sharing. And now if I share my sound, you should be able to hear it. If you can't, please let me know. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, sorry. Okay, so moving into some formal aspects, another thing I would like to point out about this work, wherever it is performed, and which I personally find really interesting, is that contrast between the geometric and the organic. On one hand, we have a strong character of the basic structure of the pieces of paper, which is geometric. And on the other hand, there is a remarkably organic nature of the movements of all the performers working as a whole on top of the paper, almost like a unicellular organism, as I said before. And the organic and chaotic nature of the marks that the performers produced, which juxtapose as well to that geometry. Here is a close-up view of the fragments that the participants produced in Tenerife once they were back in my studio. So you can see what I mean about the marks here. And well, I would like to mention as well about some technical difficulties that the making of this work involved. Well, I have already mentioned about the restrictions related to the pandemic in terms of how many people could gather in one space. And as I said, I was only able to do this piece of work because it happened in an academic context. But again, because of the virus, we needed to perform it outdoors, which was made it kind of difficult, let's say, to install the pieces of paper because the college where the area where the college is quite windy. So that was a bit tricky. Aside from those contextual difficulties, the work itself is way more complicated logistically than those that I have done before and required quite a long time. As I said before, the previous research that allowed me to come up with this idea lasted for nearly months. And then I spent several days getting all the components ready with the help of 3 assistants. Like measuring out and cutting the paper, finding the best way to tie people together because we needed the wooden bars to be linked in a way that was elastic enough to allow the participants to move comfortably, but still rigid enough for them to condition each other. So we needed to find that balance. And also installing the setting for the performance in the wind, fighting against the wind that blew the papers away. Well, that was quite tricky, as I said before. And well, the images you're seeing at the moment are actually of the installation at Trinity Buoy Wharf, but they help to illustrate what I'm saying. And well, I'm just mentioning all these behind scene aspects because I have the feeling sometimes that many people are not usually aware of how much work is behind a 15 minutes performance. So just mentioning. Last but not least, I would like to mention about some feedback that I have received about the work, especially in terms of the readings that other people have made of this work. This is something that inevitably happens to many other artists, but I personally love it. Even though as an artist, you have a very specific concept and intention in mind when making your work, people with different backgrounds, interests, experiences, or even ideologies will make their own interpretations of it. For instance, I remember a person who commented on Instagram, I love how this drawing process relates to jewelry. So I suppose this person was probably a jewelry artist, and perhaps her comment was related to the circular structure, I suppose. An exhibitor of the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize 21, Laura Elkins, commented that it reminded her of the Ouija board because she saw in the work a mysterious element, like who's moving whom or is anyone. I never thought about that connection between the work and the Ouija board, but I think their point made total sense to me. And also artist Robert Luzar commented that for him, the work could be also related to alienation of labor, which I thought was fascinating. He saw the structure as a giant gear in which a group of individuals were linked in a chain to work on something without even being allowed to look at each other. So it seems to me that the work is ambiguous enough to allow many other interpretations, and I think that's great, and I find it fascinating. And before we finish, I would like to show you a short video of the making of this work, just to give you behind the scene point of view. All right. And well, to finish, we have here a post-performance image of the participants in Tenerife, all really happy of having taken part. And I also have added below my website, email and Instagram username, in case someone is curious to have a look to other projects or wish to get in touch. And well, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting. Thank you very much for listening and for joining us today. And I can't wait to hear your comments, feedback, and questions about 6 feet. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you. M.Lohrum, do you want to stop sharing? Then we can.
Yes.
Although I have to say that that was a fabulous image to finish on, and absolutely the perfect image, as Alyssa Alaluzia said at the end of the comments. So there's something very lovely about this audience, that we've got Alyssa whose sound was playing over your performance or accompanying your performance, which I think is fantastic. Can I just ask a question of the audience before we ask M.Lohrum? Do we have anyone who participated in the performance here? I wasn't sure if we had Ruth, but maybe not. So that's all good. So there are lots of questions for you. I think that was the most fantastic presentation, which actually did reveal all of the, not just the conceptual framing for the work and the process and in-depth practice that you have in terms of this focus on participative drawing, but also there is something about the making and the mechanics. And actually one of the things you didn't talk about is the setting up of that drawing and its geometry. You touched on it, but the geometry is incredibly important in the making of the drawing. So I didn't know if you wanted to say a little bit more about that before we go back to everyone else's questions, because although we had to adapt the installation for Trinity Buoy Wharf, but the chalking up and the drawing out that you go through or went through in Tenerife might be something that people would be interested in, because there was a drawing to prepare the drawing as a process. Yeah, definitely. Well, yes. So the reason why I chose, well, there's
the reason why I chose to work on trapezoidal pieces of paper was really a practical decision, because I needed to build up a circular structure, but that wasn't completely circular. So that allowed me to kind of build up the circle out of pieces. Well, the circle itself responds, of course, to that need of having people totally linked to each other, right? Like the whole thing closes and starts again. So yeah, and also maybe it was kind of influenced by the architecture of my college, because I don't know if you noticed, but every wall is curved in that building.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that was also some
It-
kind of
it-
inspiration for it.
It's a brilliant piece, and actually, the wind from performing it outside was actually really quite magical.
I think the wind looks amazing in the video, but it was a nightmare to install.
I can imagine.
To be honest.
Well, with all those pieces of paper flying everywhere, just as they did, even without the wind. But yes, but it looks very beautiful in the filmed,
Thank you.
the moving image work. I think we should maybe move to other people's questions. There are a number of questions coming in, some about process and comment, but obviously people are also very appreciative of the mark. And I'm going to start at the beginning, which is Ulrika, who asked if there was a practice run beforehand for the performance. I think the workings out for Tenerife were shown in the presentation, perhaps after that question came in. But in terms of Trinity Buoy Wharf, it was very much a briefing, I would say.
Well, actually, as I said, the people who participated in Trinity Buoy Wharf weren't the same people that took part in Tenerife. So in a way, that first performance I did in Tenerife helped me a lot in terms of planning how to redo the installation, and gave me an idea of how the work is going to work in a way. But for them, it was completely new. And actually, the people who took part in Tenerife, well, most of them, because Sylvia was there, the person who helped me in the first trial, but most of them weren't aware of what we're going to do until they arrived to the space, which is usually what I do with my performances as well. I don't usually provide any information in advance. So no, there's no rehearsing normally.
I think that's really helpful for people to understand. I mean, it was very impressive, the call for performers in London, and we actually fabricated the wands, as they've become called afterwards, the distancing sticks and poles up here, and they're really beautifully constructed and devised as quite beautiful objects that, now that they're covered in charcoal or compressed charcoal, they start to become like drawing instruments in themselves. So there's another layering of meaning around the things that you've constructed to form the drawing. There's quite a few questions about sound, and a question of whether the sound. I mean, you again just responded with we installed for the opening Alyssa's projection, which obviously has the music, which people who've attended all of these drawing discussions will have heard about, and a screening. So you went with that as the sound in the space. But the questions really are about what would happen if there was a different kind of sound, or which might change the stimuli and the response to it. I don't know if you heard my rambling question well.
Well, I can't hear you really well, to be honest. So, yeah. But I think, so, well, yeah, go for it. Tell me.
The questions about sound and what difference the sound made.
Yeah, well, I went through that during the presentation, actually. That's why I mentioned that the work in a way remained the same, and in a way turned into something else. Because I think that feeling of all this group of people working together and moving together as a unit still remained, but they were also responding not only to what the others were doing, but also to the sound that they all were sharing. And also it was a very specific kind of sound that I think fits the performance perfectly. So yeah, I do think sound conditions what people is doing, and probably if we play a different sound, we could see variations probably.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think so too, but it did seem absolutely in tune with the performance, which is great.
Yeah.
The other questions I think are around the collective process of removal. So Alex has asked, has a collective process of removal been a possible line of thought, the alternative means of physical trace? I mean, Alex, you can actually come on and ask that question if you want to.
Yes, I was just curious. There's a sense of trace that happens with the way they pick up the, the dust of the charcoal and so forth, anyhow, from the sense of making a sort of additive mark. But I wondered, in terms of drawing, sometimes we're thinking about things that remove, and I wondered whether there had been just an idea or a conscious idea of like a removal, because it's still going to leave a mark, but it's a kind of more of a kind of taking away sense of process action. I wondered if other things are developing, or just the curiosity of that kind of putting on and taking off with the actual physical action. Or maybe just something, if you want to talk anything more about adding or taking off, or things that have come up by elements of surprise by the process.
Well, I have worked with removing material sometimes as well. Not for this particular work, but I have tried like to invert the process as well. But sometimes the material you use, you try to remove, also leaves a mark on the way. So it's a give and take, isn't it? Yeah. And for this drawing, I don't think they were conscious. They were just concentrating on drawing, on making marks, probably, of adding marks, because most of them were artists, actually. So they come from different backgrounds and professions, which I think is great because they have like a very fresh point of view of things, So yeah, but maybe if I do something specifically with artists, they will all think about all these kind of issues, probably.
Thank you, and thanks, Alex, for coming on screen. The question from Callum is about who do the drawings belong to? He's curious as the work is almost a controlled group of commands, so theoretically someone else could make it, albeit with huge organisation and hard work. But where does that sit? I mean, we've performed your previous drawing in when the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize 2020 was in Dundee. That was our only opportunity to perform that drawing, and you weren't there. Your instructions were enough to carry the drawing forward. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Are we talking in terms of authorship of the work?
I think we're talking about authorship.
Or who keeps the work, or what's the question exactly? Because
I can ask the question, if you like. Well, just because I'm aware there's been other drawings, like, I mean, authorship of the work. I mean, the work happened because you had the idea and put everything together. But there's other drawings in the past, say, who would, like, artists. I mean, do you consider yourself an artist or like an events organizer with this drawing? Like, because you could issue a command of drawings and then someone could carry out those exact drawings and it could be made again, and it would still, I mean, it's your idea, it would be your thing. I'm just curious how it works for you, if it's like, if this is your drawing, or if it's, I'm not like, yeah, I don't know, that's kind of the question.
And it's a complex one, actually.
Sorry,
I do think of myself as the author of the work in that way, because I had the idea. But also, I think the participants co-author the work, not only because they execute the instructions that I'm sending, but notice that in this work and all the others that I have done, the instructions are really simple, really, they are not limitative in a way. Like, it's like a basic framework to play together, but then they all add things from their own perspective, from their own impulse. So there's, I try to look for a situation in which I don't control absolutely everything that's happening, because I want them to be part of it and be authors of it as well. So I don't know, I suppose some of them could arrange a drawing session on their own and do something, why not?
Yeah, thanks for that's a good answer. I was just wondering, yeah, like if one of the participants loved doing it so much and wanted to go home and get 9 other people and do it with them, like would it be okay?
Well, I have to say the very few times that happened, they invited me over to do it as well. So
Nice. Okay.
which is nice of them as well, but I suppose it's their work as well. And actually, in Trinity Buoy Wharf, when we finished the drawing, I offered the participants to keep a fragment of it. So the drawing, it's now dispersed in many different houses,
beautiful. So nice.
Which I think is beautiful as well. So
I think it's beautiful.
And in terms of what happens if a work sells, these massive artworks have never been sold. So that's not a real problem at the moment.
It's something to think about further down, because people do own performance drawings. I mean, there are ways of doing that, but I think what's beautiful, if you can still hear me, is the generosity of these works. And for me, the perfection of something about social distancing, which actually is a collective action to make something in the world and to do something affirmative, I think is a really beautiful message and metaphor and experience. I think you see that through the responses of the performers, and actually the responses of everyone you gave a piece of drawing to is actually very, very, very beautiful. There are a couple more questions, some of which are practical. Did you want to perform it and be a participant as well?
Sorry?
Would you have considered being a participant as well?
Well, I was a participant. I've always been a participant till this work, actually. Not till this work, till the one we did in 2020 in Dundee, because I couldn't be there, because I'm usually involved in the process as well. But this time I needed to film, so I wasn't there because I was taking care of the camera. But yes, I love getting involved with them, of course.
That's good to know. And the other questions, I might go onto my ordinary mic in a minute because it's a problem for you, is to how did you find the performers? It's a very straightforward question, but how did you do the call for people to perform?
Oh, you mean for this one in Trinity Buoy Wharf? Yeah, well, for the one in Tenerife, they were all like close friends or friends of close friends, because it wasn't, I couldn't put an open call because it was, as I said, there were these restrictions running because of the virus. So it was, I needed to do it only with people that I knew and I could invite over to the university. But for this one in Trinity Buoy Wharf, I invited a few people that already told me from previous exhibitions that they would be interested in participating. And also I put an open call on my Instagram for people that I didn't know in case someone else wanted to join. And you, Anita, also put another one in Drawing Projects UK Instagram. And we got a few emails from that as well. So yeah, that was, we were picking a bit from everywhere, right?
Yeah, we gathered people and people came and they performed and it was really beautiful.
It was amazing because they didn't know each other, most of them. So that's also what's beautiful about these works, I think. Like most of the times, the people who take part are total strangers between the drawing session, and then they feel like there's something that links them somehow. So I think that's beautiful as well.
I think so too. It's very powerful, incredibly powerful, transformative action that people go through. As Alex has said, a group blind drawing, but the generosity, which I think everybody is reflecting on in the chat, is a really key note. It's a key element of the work that you make, and I think it makes a very eloquent piece. I think we were really privileged to have it for the launch and to be able to present it in the full. It takes a big space. To present.
It was my privilege, really.
Our privilege, and we did have a few technical challenges in Trinity Buoy Wharf, because we can't fix to the floor. But actually, the work was beautifully set up, beautifully performed, and we hope that we'll also have some edited documentation around it to share soon, because it's something we couldn't do always and often within the show. I don't know if there are any final questions. I mean, there's comments. Pauline has commented on the experience for the participants and their focus on the drawing, and so some very focused on physical action and some very focused in a meditative space. So I think in a way that counterpoint is absolutely typical of the work, is that it's about moving into a different kind of space through drawing, through physical action, through mark making, but as a collective action. So a very powerful work, and I'm thrilled that we have this in the exhibition this year and had the opportunity to perform it. I don't think we've got any more questions unless anybody would like to put their hand up. You're welcome to come on screen to ask, and I think your microphones might be working better than mine for M.Lohrum. But if I don't see any more questions, can I just say the biggest of thank yous to you and for joining.
Can I just say very quickly, congratulations to Elisa for her success and for her wonderful piece of work.
Thank you.
You can indeed.
I think there's lots more we could talk about, so maybe we can connect properly later.
That would be lovely.
Congratulations to you. It's an amazing piece of work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's brilliant. Alyssa, I did wonder if you had a question, but you're going to connect later, I think.
I think that would, I think we ought to connect around the idea of circles. Circles are quite a primitive and quite important part of my practice as well. So I think, more circles that we could connect through would be really amazing. Really amazing. Anyway.
That sounds fantastic.
It's been fascinating, and I really appreciated the, your presentation, because it was beautifully delivered. I loved the combination of the images and your words. And I apologize for arriving late. I was going in circles online, but there we are. We ended up in the right place. It's been really wonderful to hear what you've said and to see all of these images.
Thank you. Glad you liked it.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I have to say, what a brilliant discussion, brilliant presentation, M.Lohrum, and I think we've been really privileged to hear you talk very specifically about this drawing, how it came about, its conceptual basis, the challenges and changes that it's gone through, its process of adjustment to place, site, location, but its integral purpose of, I think, building community through drawing, which of course we've just also heard. The other element of building community through drawing is the connectivity through drawing that we all share, and a really wonderful capacity to deal with something that's so fundamental to being human, to making a mark, to creating something as an imprint on the world. And this structure, form, and process of participative drawing that you've devised is something that reinforces that real commitment to the idea that mark making is for everybody and we can do it collectively together, and that we change the world through drawing. It's a very beautiful, potent piece of work, and I think it's a really consummate performance to witness and to understand more about. So can I say huge congratulations to you on the work, which is fabulous. A huge thank you to you for a wonderful drawing discussion this evening. A huge thank you to everyone in the audience for joining the drawing discussion this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all again in different events through Drawing Projects UK, through the Trinity Buoy Wharf Drawing Prize 2022, and for those of you who can, please do head to see it in London. It closes on Sunday, open 12 till 6 daily, and there are some drawing sessions on site and directors' tours on Friday if you want to hear more from me about the exhibition in situ in London. And as I've said, we'll roll out a further programme of online events associated to this year's exhibition as we go forward. But what a pleasure this evening. Thank you so much, M.Lohrum.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for attending, and thank you very much again, Anita, for inviting me.
My complete privilege and pleasure. Thank you. If I can just say to everybody, I'm just going to stay on for a moment to say thank you to Em and to try and sort out our technology. Too late. But can I say thank you? Look forward to seeing you all soon. And it's been a joy to see you all here. Thank you.
Thanks.